Hi Otto, I'm splitting the class up today into a few different sections because it's easier for me to do with different classes. Got quite a few lessons today. So we got up to gloss over. We just did churn out, meaning produce a lot of, and churn up, meaning destroy a ground surface, usually the grass. You churn up the grass, but I suppose you could churn up the flowers as well, or something like that, when you're traipsing on the flowers or trampling on the flowers. But the next one is gloss over. We've done this a few times. The salesman glossed over the price while droning on about some of the features instead. So this would mean that he avoided talking about the price. When you gloss over something, you avoid talking about an uncomfortable subject or an awkward subject or a topic which you would rather not discuss, and you gloss over it. Next phrasal verb was put forward. Can we put forward the next class a few hours? This means to make the next class take place 2 hours into the future. Yeah, you make the class 2 hours later than it is. So when you put it forward, you go into the future. When you bring it back, you go into the past. So forward is into the future and back is into the past. And if you think of it like that, then I think it's more logical. And that's why we say bring something forward as well. Let's bring that forward. We move it further into the future. So yeah, let's come on to the next one. On his behalf, on someone's behalf. If you do something on someone's behalf, you do it as their representative, and so you do it in their name. That's the idea when you do something on someone's behalf. But I'm pretty sure you've come across that one before. That's obviously not a phrasal verb. Okay, now the next one was an early example of to bear on, or to bear upon, or to have a bearing on, to be relevant to. It's on the board at the moment just behind me, and it means to pertain to. There's a good formal phrasal verb which means bear on. Pertain to. What factors pertain to house prices in Sao Paulo? Yeah, what factors bear on the house prices? So yeah, you've got pertain to, have a bearing on, bear upon. There are quite a few there, which means that it's relevant to something, or it can also mean influence or effect. The example I have on the board is the test results don't bear on your final mark. They don't pertain to your final mark. So they don't have an influence on your final mark. It can have that meaning as well, which I think is very similar as be relevant to or be connected to. Pore over is the next one, which basically means scrutinize or examine a document carefully. So you're really looking at something for a long time when you're poring over a document, or you're poring over a particular theme in a book. Yeah, you make sure you understand that it's in detail there. It's not a quick glance. It's looking at something in detail, scrutinizing. Pour over, spelt differently, P-O-U-R, like pour a drink. If I pour this coffee over my jumper, I'm not going to show you, but if I pour this coffee over my jumper, I've got a stain and I've got to clean it. So pour over, it can also mean that as well, if we're talking about the second spelling. So it's worth bearing in mind, yeah? Don't forget this. And that's the next word, bear in mind, which is also on the board somewhere up there. Keep in mind. So bear in mind that pour over can be spelt differently and have a different meaning. Yeah, don't forget. It's worth remembering. Okay, the next one is a miser. Ebenezer Scrooge, in the Charles Dickens story called A Christmas Story, I think, or A Christmas Tale. Can't exactly remember, but in this story, Ebenezer Scrooge was a famous miser, and he was a miser because he didn't like spending any money. He didn't pay his worker anything, and he wouldn't give to people who were collecting money for charity at the door. And he's a famous miser from literature. But there are many. I remember another one by George Eliot. It was Silas Marner. We had to read it at school, and it was about another miser. He counted his gold every night under the bed, and it's someone who's really concerned about saving money and doesn't like giving it to anybody. Okay, the next one, we've got some hard ones for me to do at the moment. Brush someone off, compare with fob someone off. Now, brush someone or something off, this can have a few different meanings. I brushed the dirt off my shoulders is one of them, so you can brush something off like that, and that's normally what brush something off means. And normally I think we use it in the next way with something. I brushed off his remarks as unimportant. Yeah, so it's like that. Oh, it's like water off a duck's back. Yeah, I brushed off his remarks as unimportant. So when you brush something off, you normally show that it's not really important at all, when perhaps it is, but it's not really important at all. It can also be used with people, though, like the secretary always brushes me off with an excuse. I would normally say fobs me off there, and I think that sometimes it's used like fob someone off, just get rid of someone with some kind of excuse to fob someone off. So when they come to my door collecting for charity, I always fob them off with a silly excuse. I don't want to give them any money. But yeah, brush something off, brush off a flippant remark, brush off criticism or an insult. That means treat it as unimportant, realise that it's not important to you. Okay, there was another one, wasn't there, like brush someone off and fob someone off. I've forgotten it. It begins with an S. Brush someone off, or sweep aside criticism. But there was another, shrug something off. Yeah, shrug something off, like, doesn't matter to me. Treat something as unimportant. It's connected to shrug your shoulders, like, doesn't matter. And when you shrug something off, you're like, doesn't matter, doesn't bother me. And so you brush something off, like, doesn't matter, it's nothing to me, it's a small thing. So all of them, I think you can see it actually, they are very visual. When you brush something off, it's trivial, it's unimportant. The same with shrug something off, it doesn't matter. Worth remembering all three of those together, really, or four. Brush something off, shrug something off, fob someone off, that's only someone, and sweep something aside. I think they're all like, doesn't matter. Even sweep aside, you can see how you're sweeping something aside, like, that's unimportant. So try and remember all four of those visually. It's even helping me to explain them, thinking about them visually. Okay, the next one is harrowing, which would mean disturbing, frightening perhaps, yeah, if you have a harrowing experience. So I heard a harrowing tale. Let me check I've got this one right. You never know if I'm making a mistake. But yeah, acutely distressing. So I heard a harrowing story yesterday about a couple of girls that went missing. Have I mentioned this in the first part? I think I did. But it was a harrowing story. It was quite a frightening story. Just some of the events of the case were really quite frightening. And so it was a harrowing tale for sure. Okay, the next one is to hit out at, come out against, speak out against, speak in favour of, speak against. There are a lot here. So if you hit out at your critics, you're attacking your critics and you're saying that they're wrong, you're fighting back. But you can hit out at the new proposals. The minister has hit out at the new tax proposals. It means the minister has come out against the new tax proposals. He's publicly opposed it. He's spoken against it. He's criticised it in public. So hit out at can often mean publicly criticise. And a bit like lash out at, but lash out at can also be physical, as can hit out at. They can both be physical as well. But I suppose you could say the minister has lashed out at the new proposals. In fact, newspapers often will, and it's because lash out at is more emotive. It's, you know, you get lashed with the whip, and so when you lash out at, it sounds like you're whipping out at something. It sounds more malicious, more violent even than hit out at, and because it's a more emotional word, I think you'll often see it in newspapers. And same with a lot of these phrasal verbs. The next one is tuck into, dig into, dive into. If you do this, you start really enjoying your food and you're really wolfing it down. There's another good one which should be in the same group. Tucking into your food, you're digging into it, you're diving into it, you're wolfing it down, you're gobbling it down, gobbling it up as well. You can say both, not much difference in meaning. Gobbling it down just sounds like it's going down your throat, but gobble up is probably more common actually. You're gobbling it up, you're eating it up at great speed. So there are a lot with eating. Next one is to spur someone on. This is like to encourage someone, so it's to urge them to do better. And so it is a little bit like to egg someone on, but egg someone on is normally naughty. It's normally when a kid is trying to egg his friend on, maybe to do something illegal, or perhaps to do something which is not allowed in the school, to violate the rules in some kind of way, break the rules. So yeah, spur someone on is more positive. Egg someone on is negative, but spur someone on, you can say my exam success spurred me on, but I didn't write it on your feedback. I see I made a mistake there, sorry about that. But my exam success spurred me on. It encouraged me to do more work. So all sorts of things in your life can spur you on, and it's just, the image here is of a cowboy with spurs, and he digs his spurs into the horse to make the horse go faster. So when something spurs you on, it makes you go faster. It encourages you to go forward with even greater speed. On the spur of the moment, though, it's different here, because spur someone on is verb, on the spur is noun. On the spur of the moment means just out of the blue, suddenly, and with no, is spontaneous. That's the point with on the spur of the moment. If you decided to call her on the spur of the moment, you decided to call her spontaneously. You hadn't planned it. You did it on the spur of the moment, right there, right then, at that moment, on the spur of the moment. Okay, that's the end of number 19. Let's come on to number 20. Hang on one second. Number 20 is right here. So the first one is a skip. So I had a big yellow skip, and we use these skips to get rid of old rubbish. I suppose in America they might call it a dumpster or something like that, but we call them skips. And when you want to get rid of all sorts of old rubbish, you hire them, and the lorry leaves them on your drive, and then you fill them up with rubbish, and then the lorry takes them away again a few days later. It's quite expensive, but it's worth doing to get rid of a load of junk if you've got it. Okay, again we've got fob someone off, brush someone off. The solicitor just fobbed me off with a lame excuse. That's what Jenny always did. She loved fobbing me off with a lame excuse, and it really wound me up. It really got me angry. But I suppose you brush things off all the time. It's important to brush off insults, for example. You can't take things to heart all the time, and so you have to brush off things. You have to just treat some things as unimportant because they are trivial. So remember those two, they're good ones. And shrug something off and sweep something aside. Let's keep all four of them in our head every time we meet them. Next one is to hit out at, and remember come out against, speak out against, which can be on many occasions they are interchangeable. They're not exact synonyms, because hit out at just means criticize, speak out against or come out against means publicly criticize. So if you hit out at something publicly, then it's the same as those. But to hit out at is just it can be to criticize or to attack. It really can be just to attack, physically attack. You can hit out at a robber if he starts to mug you. So hit out at is physical, just as lash out at is. But to pick away at, now this one isn't physical. This is definitely when you're pointing out somebody's faults. And it's when you keep bringing them up in public. So it's a really mean thing to do, to pick away at someone's faults. It means you're constantly criticizing someone's weaknesses, and you're constantly picking up on their weaknesses. There's another one, that you're constantly reminding them, going on at them about their weaknesses. And so picking away at people's faults, normally used with that word, by the way, faults, collocates very well with faults. It means to constantly remind someone of their weaknesses or the things which they don't do well. To come out against, to speak out against, we've done that already. Be on at someone about something, go on at someone about something, keep on at someone about something. We've done this many times as well. It's when you constantly criticize or constantly annoy or remind someone about something. So the leader of the opposition had gone on at the Prime Minister about his recent error or the recent political scandal, and it means just constantly spoken about this, constantly lashed out at him concerning this theme. Okay, to soldier on, it means to press on, to push on, to march on. It means keep going even though things are hard. So there was one which we did recently, wasn't there? Yeah, you could even say bear up, although it's not the same as soldier on, not quite the same, but they're related. Soldier on is what you mean by you're going to keep going regardless of all the difficulties. Bear up means that you are recovering from difficulties. So they are slightly different, even though I've got them on the board together. But yeah, soldier on means keep going in spite of difficulty. Bear up or hold up means that you're recovering after a difficulty. Okay, next one, GP. It means a family doctor here in the UK. It actually stands for General Practitioner, and that's why we say GP. But because you practice medicine, so we say General Practitioner. But yeah, it means family doctor, that's all. Okay, to be cancelled out, you normally not use cancel out in mathematics. I've been using it recently with my daughter. So if something cancels out, it's when two things, let's say you've got an equation. You've got, let me try and get this right. So let's say you've got 7x squared plus c equals bx squared plus c. The plus c on each side cancels out to 0. Yeah, and you can just get rid of it. It cancels out. You can get rid of the plus c on both sides and you know that it's still going to be the same, right? Does that make sense to you? Because you're adding the same value onto each side, so you can just cancel it out. I think that makes sense, yeah? So it's when you have two things on both sides of the equation and they balance and you can just, they cancel out. That's how I usually see them. So it's like when two things balance out, you can also say balance out, and so they compensate for each other and cancel out their effects. So the inflammation is cancelled out by the cold. Well, I don't really understand how I've used it there, if I'm honest. Let me see what cancel out comes out. What comes out for cancel out on the dictionary. Okay. Yep, we've got cancel out something. To take away the effect of one thing by doing another thing that has the opposite effect. Yeah, so plus and minus cancel out, for example. If you've got a positive one and a negative one, they cancel out to 0. Yeah, because plus one and minus one cancel out. They're opposites. So you can't be creative and critical at the same time. One cancels out the other. Yeah, the idea is that you can't do both things at the same time because they're mutually exclusive, and so they cancel each other out. Okay, I hope that one's clear. If it isn't, bring it up in class and we'll go through it in more detail. To rifle through, it means to go through or sift through. Sift through is very often used for rubbish. Rifle through means rummage through, really. Go through someone's belongings. Ransack. I mean, ransack would be the apartment, and it's when you turn everything over in the apartment and make a complete mess of the place. But if you rifle through someone's bag or you sift through the rubbish, you're going through it, taking one thing out, then another thing, and you're probably looking for something. Okay, to sup up or soak up or drink in means to take in, to absorb. So you can soak up the sunshine. You can, weird isn't it, but you can soak up the sunshine. A t-shirt can soak up water and you can soak up the atmosphere, but we did this in the first part. Okay, fall into, opportunity fell into my lap. It just means landed right on my lap, landed right in front of me. Nice easy one, I think. To retract means to take back or to climb down from an earlier position, but we normally use climb down like that. You take a position and then you climb down, so you decide that you were wrong. But when you retract your words or retract your statement, you say I was wrong with that statement. So it's not a position, it's a statement, but very similar ideas behind both of them. So you retract a statement, you say what I said was untrue, I'm sorry. You climb down, you say my position was wrong, I'm sorry. If you settle down somewhere, you decide to live there forever. got to go in a few minutes, I'm afraid. I'll do the last 10 minutes after my next lesson. But if you get cold feet, you suddenly don't want to get married. You're about to get married, and at the last moment you get cold feet. It's nowadays used for other important decisions, where you get cold feet right before the last moment of an important decision. But it used to be just for marriages. And so I was engaged. I said before, I was engaged, and I got cold feet before it happened, and she got cold feet as well. And anyway, we didn't get married in the end. Last one on this one is to take a stance on. It means to take a position. To take a position concerning some issue, or something that is a bit of causing discussion in the media. You take a stance on it. You take a position. You decide what you think. You have an opinion about it. Okay, we'll start with lesson feedback 21 after the next class, and I'll do 10 more minutes, and that should be the whole hour. Thanks a lot for listening, and I'll see you in an hour.